Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias.
So I've actually been really excited to show this knife for some time now. Now, before I even begin, this is not an original. This is a replica. This is made by Windlass Steelcraft. But this, as you can tell, is a Mk1 trench knife, the old knuckle duster knife from World War I. Well, so the story goes. We'll go into more of that in the near future. But what I have here is actually a replica of the Mk1 trench knife. And as you can see here, it is actually made by Windlass Steelcraft out of India. This is a company that makes museum quality replicas, and I mean right down to the kind of steel they're using and everything else. Now, the Mk1 trench knife, this is a knife that I have wanted to have ever since I was a little kid. No doubt about it. My dad used to go to pawn shops all the time, and the first time I ever saw one of these knives was actually in a pawn shop in Florida when my dad was visiting it. I saw it sitting in there, and man, it's like, wow, that is so cool. And you know, if I would have had money and if my dad would have let an 8-year-old buy it, I would have snatched that up right away. And I'm sure it was probably dirt cheap, probably about $10 at the time, you know, because that's the way it was. And what I have is just a replica of it, because well, these actually original versions of this, you know, an original Mk1 trench knife, especially one that would have the O-Lion on it, A-U-L-I-O-N on here, or Lion, which actually refers to like the courage of a lion. They're not actually, we won't go into all the details. We'll go into the details in another one. Really what I want to focus on is the Windlass Steelcraft copy of the knife, because there are copies of this out there. There are several copies out there. The one that most people probably have is the Bud K copy, which goes for about $20. This is not it. This is more expensive than this, about 5 to 6 times more expensive than what you're going to spend to get the Bud K version of this, because of the quality of the build of this thing and just everything about it. Now, this one does come with the sheath, and a lot of people will be complaining about this sheath, but I want to talk about both of these, and I'm going to be talking about them as replicas of the original, because there's a little bit difference about this, because a lot of people will talk about this replica and then they will talk about all the problems that the knife has. You know, that blade's going to snap if you do this, or you know, how well can it punch, and all this other stuff, things like that. And you know, a big one is complaints about this cheap metal sheath. What I want to talk about is just how accurate of a copy these are to the original, because this is an amazing copy of the Mk1 trench knife, right down to every flaw and fault that you have with the original Mk1 trench knife. And that to me is more important than something that would be, you know, let's make it better or something like that. Now, where I'm going to start with this comparison is actually with the sheath, or scabbard, whichever way you want to call it. If you notice, it is a fairly basic scabbard. There's not much to it. If you notice, there's a couple indentations here. Those are actually to grip the blade, and you'll have them on both sides. And basically, when you slide the blade in here, the scabbard is going to get, you know, once you get about to that part, you have to actually press it the rest of the way in. And this is something that a lot of people complain about, because you basically have steel on steel. And, you know, basically when you pull it out, you heard that sound? That was steel rubbing against steel. A lot of people complain about that. It's like, man, that's going to scratch out my blade all over the place. Well, yeah, it might, but you know what? That's the original design of it. But fortunately, as you can see here, there's no scratching going on this blade, and that's because this is a relatively mild steel I don't know exactly what level of steel it is. I don't know if it's even a carbon steel, but it probably is a carbon type steel, but it is a softer steel than the blade steel. The blade steel is a tempered 1080 carbon steel, and it is finished. You know, it's got a nice bluing going on there. And will this eventually scratch it? I bet it will. If I continue to put it in and out, eventually it is going to scratch the blade. It's going to mess up the bluing on the blade. But the knife, just like the original, that would have happened with the original too. The scabbard is perfect. It is exactly what the original scabbard was like, right down to the way it attaches to the blade or to the belt. Notice these two catches there. Later scabbards would use that the little hook that you pass through the belt here, and it would hang off of the belt. That's not the way this was done. This has got those little hooks there because what it does is it goes on the belt like so, and it just hangs on the belt like that. I'm not crazy about the way that scabbard does that. I find it you know, very possible that you could lose your knife a little bit easier because of the way this hooks onto the belt. But this is the way it was originally designed to hook onto a belt. Just snap it in like that, and then, you know, it should stay in place. And so the scabbard is spot on. Everything about the scabbard is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And it's got a nice heavy, I think it's like a baked on black paint going on. And then as you can see here on the back side, it is marked LF and C 1918. That is one of the companies that made the scabbard. Everything about this scabbard is spot on. This is the way it's supposed to be. Not going to be the best thing in the long run. When it comes to your blade, it might end up scratching it eventually, or at least removing some of the bluing. But this is it. This is the way the scabbard's supposed to be. So if you're looking for an authentic copy of the original scabbard, you know, okay, I've you know, it's not the real deal, but it's as close to the real deal as you can get. And I would say the same thing about this dagger. It is about as close as you're going to be able to get. I don't know what steel was originally used in the original Mark 1 trench knives. I don't know if it is 1080 or not, but that's what is used in here. It's using a 1080 carbon steel blade. The blade length is 6 3/4 inches, which is exactly the same length that the originals had. It has the same shape, and it is double-edged, running on both sides. And they did a wonderful job with the grinds on that blade. It's really nicely done all the way out to the tip. So it's a beautiful little grind on it. You've got the diamond cross section on the blade, so you've got that it's kind of a convex feel to the diamond cross section. It even has the thinning of the tang right at the end there before it enters into the handle, and you can see where it goes in. Now this has a push tang that starts at that width and it slowly gets narrower, and then it ends off with a screw on to the bottom so that you can actually thread in the skull crusher cap there. And if you notice, that began as a hex cap and then it has been pointed. This is exactly the way the original was done. It has a hex cap that you can tighten and loosen, and then it's got the nice point going on. And this is you know, a carbon steel also. So this is a steel tip, and then you have the brass knuckles there going in there. And the original ones that were made in France had smaller tips going on with this, but the LF and C ones were more pronounced, just like you see here. The handle grip is approximately the right size for this. They actually got all the dimensions off of an original one and they copied it from there right down to the stamping on the handle there. the US 1918, and then LF and C underneath there, again with 1918 there. The only thing that separates this from the original is where it says Windlass Cutlery there. Now, like I mentioned, I don't know, the original might have had 1095 carbon steel, might have been 1070. I don't know the specifications of the original steel. One of the things that you will notice is notice how wide that front guard gets like that, bevel in the front guard, the way it is rounded out like that. That actually is the way the originals were. They had that guard in the front, almost like you'd see on a sword's guard or something, to protect the hand when someone was fighting against you. If their blade slipped up on this blade, it would hit that guard and protect your hand. And I'll also tell you something else. If you're going to be punching something with this, grip it extremely tight, because otherwise you're going to feel it in your hand too. But anyway, I was just really impressed with just how accurate of a copy this is to the original. It has just about every flaw that you will find in the original, which it should, because this is a copy. This is a museum copy, a museum quality copy of the original. This is not someone who looked at it and said, hey, we'll make something that's approximately the same as the Mark I trench knife, and we'll sell it for cheap. This is not what you have with this knife. This is one that goes in the $125 range versus the $20 range that you get in the Mk1, which is not a solid brass handle and does not have the proper guard going on or anything like that. What this does, though, is it makes something affordable for someone like me to actually own one of these, because if I were actually to try and track down an original one of these and get one in even modest shape, we're talking $400 to $600, and that might be one with a blade that is broken and all sorts of things. These things are not cheap, and they're also very difficult to find. If you actually manage to find one of these in a swap, in a pawn shop or something, or in a swap meet or something, and you can get it for a really low price, my hat goes off to you. You obviously got it from somebody that did not realize what they had. But be very careful, look very closely, and see if they did some sanding around this area here, because like I said, this is the only thing that separates this knife from an original, is the fact that it says Windlass here since 1943. So that is one of the problems when somebody is making a museum quality copy. And the scabbard here, that is the only thing marked there. So unless you have an original to go off of, and can actually like look at the font there and see if the font is different or anything like that, be wary if it's in really excellent shape, because it might be one of these that somebody is trying to pass off as the original, because that would probably be fairly easy to do because of how accurate they have been with the copy here. Now, that does not make this a counterfeit. That makes this a museum quality reproduction. And there's nothing wrong with a museum quality reproduction unless you decide to try and counterfeit it and then sell it for even more than it's worth. Yeah, anyway, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this. I will be going into another video in the future, going into the history behind this, and the story of when it actually ends up getting into service with the United States military and so on and so forth. Because the story behind the Mark I trench knife is pretty interesting. In any case, with that said, I will let you go. Hope you enjoyed a first look at a museum quality reproduction of the Mark I trench knife.
let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.